have a co-host.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness. So cute. I love her or him.
It's a he.
Yeah, what's his name?
Jasper.
Jasper.
Hey there, welcome back to the As I Understand It podcast, the discussion podcast about careers, young adulthood, and the evolving world we live in. I'm your host, Cameron Geddes.
And I'm your co-host, Graham Nesbitt.
And today we are pleased to welcome back Tiffany Christianson, if you want to say hi, Tiff.
Hi, everyone.
And we're also excited to invite on a new guest, my former coworker, Gabe Penegor, if you want to say hi, Gabe.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And before we get started with our topics for today, we'll just each say a little bit about ourselves, give you an idea of who we are. I'll go first. My name's Cameron Geddes. I'm 25 and graduated from Hope College in May of 2021 with degrees in economics and global studies. I currently work as a retail sales analyst with the Kraft Heinz Company, and I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In my free time, I like to, lift weights and play video games and stuff like that. Graham, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, my name is Graham Nesbitt. I went to Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois, graduated in 2021. I currently work as an addictions counselor in the Rockford region, and in my free time, I very much enjoy playing Settlers of Catan.
Thanks, Graham. Tiff, would you like to remind our guests about your background?
Sure, yeah. My name's Tiff Christianson, and I graduated with a bachelor's in biology in 2021. I just graduated with a master's degree in teaching this past spring, so hurrah. And in my free time, I like to play volleyball. I like to play video games, that kind of stuff.
Nice, thanks, Tiff. And then lastly, Gabe, if you want to clue us in.
Yeah. So I studied business marketing undergraduate from the University of Colorado at Boulder, and then quickly realized that I didn't want to be in sales. So went and got my graduate degree from Michigan State University, specifically in market research and data science. Been working with, data suppliers or vendors, you could say, that work with both retail and CPG industries over the last couple of years. Hobbies include golfing and video games, and I'm currently located in the Charlotte, North Carolina area.
Gotcha. Thanks, Gabe. And do you say who you work for?
Oh, and sorry, yeah, I'm currently working for NielsenIQ, and that's not to be confused with Nielsen Ratings or Media. That's two separate companies. We're the consumer intelligence side of things.
Thanks, Gabe. All right, so we'll get right into our first topic of the day. What are some green flags of a workplace or company? So according to talentworks.com, which is a recruitment company, there are a few green flags, I'm saying, that indicate potential positive work environments. A strong office design can make employees up to 33% happier at work. According to a recent report, if workers feel happy in their office surrounding, they're less likely to be stressed. High employees experience 31% higher productivity, as well as this studies show that they are 37% better at selling and display 3 times more creativity than their unhappy counterparts. Employees who report being happy at work take 10 times fewer sick days. A survey by the Eye Opener Institute for People and Performance found that happy employees stay in their role for twice as long. So, Gabe, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, so obviously it's very interesting times that we're living in. There's a lot of us that are in office, some are hybrid. There's still a fair amount of us that are fully remote. But as someone who works, fully remote, I can kind of give my perspective. And it's always interesting being fully remote, trying to really understand a company's culture, just because you're not there on a daily basis. You're not with everyone working in the office. So you kind of have to figure out the culture through internal meetings and, just kind of picking up on different context clues. But, as I was really thinking about, different green flags that you could look for in a company or a workplace, I mean, the first one that comes to mind is obviously work-life balance. And, a lot of companies these days are offering some form of unlimited time off. And that usually comes with some sort of caveat. One, major green flag that I can say, at least while working at NielsenIQ, is that they've been extremely gracious with not only the time that they've let me take off, but just for anything. If it's you got a bad head cold, take the day off. You got to go play in a tournament with a friend, take the day off. So just having that freedom to be trusted to deliver your work while still living your life on the side and get everything done that you want to. That's a huge component. I'd say open communication and your team, during the interview process, the more that you can get to know your team and who you'll be working with. I mean, the job is really dictated by your manager and who you're working with. I mean, that's who you're with every day. It's who's going to make your experience either that much better or that much worse. Because at the end of the day, work is work, but it's the people that you're with that, make the work a little bit more rewarding. This third one is really important to me. You really want to be able to look for growth opportunities. So if you can, ask that during the interview process or an informational, maybe look at some, people who have been there for a few years and see what their growth track has looked like. You really want, not only support from leadership, but, those opportunities to continue your own professional and personal growth. And that can come in many forms, whether it's LinkedIn Learning or continuing education, or even just being given opportunities to go outside your role. And then the fourth and final one that I just really wanted to touch on, that's really big for me personally, is having a clear vision and a strategic growth plan into the future. There's just a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. There's a lot of startups, a lot of mid-sized companies merging, larger companies merging. So, what does that all mean? And I think when you ask about those, growth plans, the answer tells a lot about the company culture. Their plans for integration, their plans of even just the way they communicate it back to you, their response can give you a lot of insight as to, how clear they are on that growth or strategic vision. Because if there isn't a very clear strategic path forward, it can get pretty dicey and you'll run into a lot of reorgs and the culture can end up shifting on you.
Yeah. I think Gabe is spot on about all that. By the way, I'll say that when Gabe is talking about tournaments, he's talking about golf tournaments, not Super Smash Bros. Tournaments like the other three of us are probably big fans of.
Gaming and golf, so it could be either.
Fair point. Yeah, but I think I'll follow up with that. And I'll just say that I think Gabe was right on the money with all that. It's important to have clear communication and have a company that knows what they're doing and is very open about taking days off when you need them. I've worked for a number of companies at this point, and I think companies that are very straightforward and like as honest as they can be, given the fact that you're talking to a subset, you're always talking to a subset of the entire company. So even if they're being honest with you, sometimes they might not be clued into what other departments or like what higher ups are thinking. So, but getting people on the level as much as possible, that's a really key sign that they're going to be trustworthy in a good place to work with in the long term. And I think being clear about bonuses, being clear about pay, being clear about setting objectives,
plans, right?
Yeah, it's just a really strong indicator that they're thinking forward. And it's tough to find companies that are trendsetters and not trend chasers. I think that unfortunately, just kind of in the market nowadays, we're seeing a lot of trend chasing, and finding a company that is really solid in their identity, all of the kind of metaphysical kind of hablooey that they talk about, on like social media or like they say during interviews. Sometimes it is just white noise and it doesn't mean anything, but other times you can tell that it's actually an indication that everyone there is on the same page and has the same goals in mind, has the same strategic plan. And those things matter a lot more than you would think, because they kind of put guardrails and limitations on what level of crazy decisions might happen in the future without anyone's input. And like having some sort of guardrails and having leadership kind of operate within boundaries is really important. You know, because they're just one part of the machine at the end of the day. So, Tiff, I don't know if you want to follow up with that.
Yeah, I really resonated with what Gabe was saying about like how coworkers kind of make or break it. Anecdotally, like my workplace, I was not planning on staying in Rockford. I wanted to get out of
Nobody does.
Dodge.
Nobody
Yeah,
does.
nobody does. I think Graham and I are like trapped here. But yeah, so but I did my student teaching at East, and I just absolutely loved working with the people there. And they basically were the major factor for me staying here in Rockford, which is a place nobody wants to be. Like, absolutely not. So yeah, coworkers make or break, I would say, a job.
Yeah, good insights from Tiff there. Graham, if you got any thoughts before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, just following up on what Tiff said, the coworkers making or breaking it. Another green flag can just be lack of turnover. Just people sticking around is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. All right, sounds like we covered that off pretty well. We'll just go on to the next question here. How should you handle criticism or negative feedback? I've got some kind of a quick stat/quote from Cognology, which is a talent management system. A majority of employees prefer corrective feedback to praise and recognition. In the survey of 900 global employees, 57% of respondents stated that they prefer corrective, which is defined as negative or constructive feedback, whilst only 43% stated they prefer praise or recognition. Interestingly, the more confident you are, they found the more likely it is you prefer corrective feedback. Also according to this findings, almost everyone loves receiving feedback, but hates giving it. So I'll start on this question. I found that constructive criticism is also a really good green flag of a company of when they're, again, being honest with you, when they're being straightforward. There is a difference, of course, from like just getting slammed by your manager over things versus actually helpful feedback. But Gabe and I'll say again, without naming names and all that stuff, Gabe and I had an excellent manager when we were working together. And he always went above and beyond to not only, grade you and figure out what you're doing right and wrong, but to give you personal anecdotes and his experience on how he got past similar roadblocks working. So, for instance, like I'm a pretty chatty person. Actually, like maybe that's changed a little bit in previous years, but I'm a very chatty person, and that was kind of a setback when I first started at the company because like there's kind of a limit on what people have time for before they have to move on to the next meeting or the next task. And he gave some good advice about kind of controlling your personality in the workplace, or like making yourself malleable enough to work in an environment that's professional. And he defined it as like, you don't need to, he's like, think of it like a bottle of Coke. Like if you're pouring it into a glass, you don't need to change what is in the Coke bottle. It's still Coke, but change how much of it you're pouring out at a given time. So don't necessarily modify who you are, but also like have your personality be a part of the conversation if it's appropriate. Don't overdo it. Give other people room to speak and so on. And it's little pieces like that. Yeah.
Quickly, Cam, I got the exact same feedback. I think a lot of people come
in. Did you?
I think a lot of people come in very eager, wanting to, prove themselves. And it's almost the less is more approach, taking that active listening kind of stance. And that way, when you do speak up, your words have that much more impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So Gabe, if you want to take the handoff on that question, and then, Graham and Tiff, you want to follow up?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just like Cam. I'm a big fan of receiving feedback, both, constructive. I prefer it to be constructive, but I should say both positive and negative feedback. I think feedback is crucial for, understanding where you need to grow. And I think the best way that you can handle that feedback, especially when it might be negative or, you know, it's something that you were really passionate about or put a lot of time into, is to just really, you know, try and be objective about it and try and remember that the feedback isn't against you. It's truly to improve, you know, the product that you are delivering to the client, the company. It's to improve your own professional skill set, you know, moving forward, so that, you know, you're more well equipped. So for me personally, I'm always seeking out feedback. I'm always asking my managers outside of, you know, mid-year reviews or things like that. Like, how am I doing? Am I, you know, staying on track with my goals? Are there any areas that you've noticed I could maybe, you know, start engaging a little bit more, or, you know, put a little bit more time into? So, you know, handling criticism or negative feedback, that's going to be part of any role that you get into professionally. And it really speaks volumes to your character if you're able to take that just with, you know, a smile on your face, take it on the chin, really do listen, absorb, and then come back and try not to make those same mistakes.
No. Either of you want to chime in there? Anything to add?
Yeah, I would say like I completely agree with all of that, absolutely. I would say like I feel like being able to take constructive criticism and not feel negative about it and not feel like it's an attack on your person is like an skill that everybody has to learn. And actually I have a question. Does anybody know like do any of you know how to like actually like work towards getting better at taking in criticism and constructive feedback and using that objectively without um, you know, conflating it with your self-worth?
Um, I would just say that, like, in my experience, I think it's, unfortunately, sometimes it's more of a personality trait of like some people have it and some people don't. Um, but it is possible to work towards having a greater capacity for taking negative feedback.
Mhm.
Um, I think a lot of it, like you said, just comes down to parsing versus what's personal versus what's professional. And I think also too, it's okay to kind of grade the feedback you're getting on, is that something I've heard from other people? Is that something that logically stands up? Or is that
Who's
something
giving you the
that,
feedback?
right? Or it's like, is it something that I think this other person who's giving me feedback is off the mark on? Because it's like, uh, I ask a lot of questions at work. I'm a very curious employee. I ask maybe too much questions, but if someone were to give me feedback and say like, "Oh, I just don't think you're very invested in the work," or like you don't seem like you're really interested in learning more. I would find that tough to believe just knowing my work style, and I'd probably go to someone else for, again, for feedback on that and say like, does this match your experience? But if they were saying something like, "Oh, you're having a like tough time keeping focus," or like you're trying to take on a lot more at one time than you probably should, like that's been true in certain situations in the past. So that's something I could verify and say like, all right, I'm glad that they pointed that out. So just having some like critical thinking involved with it and humility to be like, we're all people, we all make mistakes. Everyone kind of sucks at what they're doing when they start. Like that's part of the game.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as I say, I think, you know, being able to emotionally detach yourself from that, you know, I put so much work or energy into this, you know, it's really not an attack on you. You got to be able to separate the two and really just look at it for what it is, and, you know, the positives that you can receive. The best thing that I've found for me, Tiff, was to just say thank you, not try to respond or defend it, go back, reflect on it. And then, you know, like Cam was saying, double check with coworkers, other mentors. If it checks out, then yeah, it's something that you might need to work on. And if it doesn't, maybe it's something that you have a further discussion about.
As I think what Cameron was saying earlier, people are less likely to actually want to give the feedback. So
Mm,
if they are giving the feedback, they're probably not doing it because they're, you know, personally mad at you or something. They're doing it because they want to see you doing better and help you. So they're doing it for a good reason, and that can kind of help having that mindset when you hear it.
yeah, that's an excellent point, Graham. I'm glad you mentioned that. All right, well then I think we can move to our last question for today, which is a 4-day work week feasible, particularly in the US? Our next stat comes from the market research company, DriveResearch. They state that according to our research, 33% of organizations offer 4-day, 40-hour work weeks. 56, and that might be, this survey may have been global. I guess I'd have to double check that, but they said 56% of employees would rather work a 40-hour work week in 4 days instead of 5 days. 77% of workers reported increased productivity when working a 4-day work week. 58% of employees said they'd choose a 4-day work week over a pay raise even. Experts predict that by 2025, 80% of businesses will adopt a more flexible work schedule, including shorter work weeks. 64% of business leaders expect the 4-day work week to become the norm. However, 62% of businesses stating that implementing a 4-day work week would require reduction in employee salaries, and 40% of employees noted being worried about their workload becoming unmanageable with a shorter work week. So some interesting kind of dichotomy there on feasibility versus how much everyone wants to do it. Tiff, would you want to kick us off on this subject?
Yeah, so to answer the question directly, like, is a 4-day work week feasible? Like, honestly, I feel like that comes down to the company, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, there isn't a one size fits all. But like you said, there are so many benefits to the individual when it comes to like having a 4-day work week. Like, um it reduces costs for the company, which is good. It creates happier employees. It increases like retention, so people stay at the company longer. Um, Individuals tend to have like fewer health issues. I think you stated like they take fewer sick days when they're happier. I don't know, all around, it is going to increase happiness and the ability of the employees, in my opinion. It increases, yeah, productivity levels, that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, there are going to be like cons as well. You know, there are going to be drawbacks to this, but when I was looking into it, most of the drawbacks are like for the company as a whole and pretty much not for individual employees. I don't think any of you guys are like CEOs of like mega corporations. So thanks, Gabe. Yeah, no, yeah.
Not since I last checked.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll fall into your lap. But I feel like individual employee happiness and satisfaction with their job is far more important than a company's bottom line. And yeah, it can be very beneficial for the company as well, monetarily speaking.
Yeah, I'll follow up with what Tiff was saying, and I actually just was curious about the like origins of the 5-day work week. I knew this beforehand, but I wanted to look it up and double check it while we were talking. I've got a thing from Wikipedia here. Actual work week lengths have been falling in the developed world. In the US, the work week length reduced slowly from before Civil War to the start of the 20th century. There's a rapid reduction between 1900 and 1920. When weekly hours fell by about 8%. And it's actually Henry Ford standardized a 5-day work week instead of the prevalent 6 days without reducing pay. And then there's some other stuff about like some legislation and like after the Great Depression reducing it, and FDR signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which established it officially for many workers. So all that to say, basically, like it worked in the past, reducing it, at least in the US, and particularly like rural or urban situations. Rural situations, I don't know. That's always kind of a different ball game, but I think it was done before, and I think it had good effects. And I just think that the demographics and stuff trend that way nowadays of people wanting to have the trends are heading in the direction of wanting a shorter work week. Just I think also to be more efficient. Like I don't think that for most companies, I don't think they're going to see their output go down moving to 4 days instead of 5. Maybe for like some sales departments and things where it's like really particular on the amount of time. But for most project-based situations and I think they're going to see great return on investment from decreasing it, like as has happened in the past and in many countries where it's been tried to some degree. You almost always see improvements. So it's like, if it's a win-win, like take it. So that's just my thoughts.
Just like you were saying, Cam, there's been multiple recent studies out of, I believe, the UK and some other countries in Europe about doing this 4-day work week experiment. I'm sure that's maybe where some of these numbers come from, but yeah, at least, Tiff was saying it does vary by industry, but within, let's say, corporate America, I think a 4-day work week is extremely viable. I can't tell you a single person I've ever met who is not at the C-suite level who actually genuinely puts in 40 plus hours a week, unless you're in finance.
Except for Gabe and I, for legal
Yes.
purposes.
Nielsen, if you're watching, I put in 60 hours a week, but no human can just, sit and, crank out 40 hours of work 5 days straight and still, especially in this remote and hybrid world where we're, taking care of things and maybe popping out for an hour here or there to go do something. I actually think that if you shorten that to 4 days, you not only get the, increase of productivity, happiness, retention, but you also, kind of free up your employees' time in a sense. You'll have them more available to you. They'll be, very on for those 4 days, and then it's those 3 days off where, if the proper boundaries are set, you'll have that nice division. And yeah, the thing that I was, kind of interested by that you said, Cam, is the, 62% of businesses stating that, a 4-day work week would require a reduction in employee salaries. I'm not quite sure why that would be. Especially if the production is still going up, everything is working well. But to succinctly answer the question, I really do believe in the 4-day work week. It's something that I've been pushing for years, and unfortunately, COVID and remote work kind of put that on the back burner. It was really kind of in the forefront of the news there for a while, but I'd love to see it come back into the public opinion, public forum.
Yeah. Any thoughts before we close out, Graham?
Yeah, I work 4 days a week and it is amazing and I love it. And
What's your schedule, Graham, for the audience?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 to 9:30. I love the 4-day work week. It is the reason I took this job. A large factor in that and especially the Monday to Thursday, having the entire weekend available. I think it is very good. I come back pretty most of the time refreshed. Monday is a very productive day for me, just having that rest. Tuesday, if I get enough sleep, also pretty productive. I think it is viable. And I mean, as long as you're getting what you need done in those, you're still working 40. I work 10-hour shifts, so might be a bit different if there were to be 4 8-hour days, but 40 hours in 4 days. I know it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to work 10 hours in a day or 10 and a half with the break. But I'm of the persuasion that I like just getting it out of the way. And I would work 3 days a week, if I could, but just working a little bit longer than having a really nice extended weekend, I think is great on many different fronts.
If I could throw something out there, Graham, that's super interesting that you're working, in a 4-day-a-week capacity. Do you think that there's ever a possibility where companies offer the choice of, you could work a 4-day week schedule on those hours, or a 5-day, whatever is better?
I was given a choice when taking this job. I could work the 5-day or the 4-day. I chose the 4-day in a heartbeat.
Sounds cutting edge. I think that might be a trend that we start to see a little bit more and more, especially going back. There was a point that you had touched on, Cam, employee retention, just making sure your employees are happy. The number one, like I said, is work-life balance, and a 4-day work week directly speaks to that work-life balance. And I see a lot of turnover that happens as a result of burnout. So I think just another positive of that 4-day work week.
Yeah, great point, Gabe. All right. Well, I think that will do it for today. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thanks for my co-host Graham here. Always a pleasure. Thank you for Tiff for coming back on. Appreciate it. And then Gabe as well for making the time. Glad everyone was able to make it. So yeah, that'll do it for today. Check us out on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, or if we end up being on something else and you're hearing this somewhere else. Thank you to Graham's cat for always lightening the mood. You'll expect us back in about 2 weeks with some new guests and topics. So till then, everyone, take care and have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.